Commander Vork's fear did not last. It curdled into a rage so hot it burned away all caution. The humiliation of the sonic attack, the breached garrison, the stolen prisoners, it was an insult that demanded annihilation. He stopped caring about the planet's precious crystalline core. He stopped caring about orders. He sent a single, furious message to the Krail battle group in orbit. The human infestation is concentrated in the southern forest valley. The planet is lost. Burn it clean. Burn it all. In the sky above Illyria, the Krail cruiser Worldbreaker and its 2 remaining destroyers turned their blunt noses downward. Their weapon ports glowed with a building, sickly green light. Below, in the valley, the leaves of the giant ferns began to tremble as if in a rising wind. On the bridge of the unyielding Resolve, the sensor alarm screamed. Captain Kim Dae-Hyan watched the orbital readouts, his face a mask of granite. He had known this was the only way it could end. He had hoped for more time. Orbital bombardment in 3 minutes, the tactical officer said, voice hollow. Yield estimates. Total sterilization of the valley. Elder Liren stood beside Kim, their luminous eyes on the screen showing the Krail ships. You gave us our song back, they chimed softly. You made us remember what hope sounds like. That is enough. Kim shook his head. It is not. He turned to Lee Haniel. Send the final packet. The one we prepared. On every frequency. No encryption. Shout it. Haniel, her fingers steady now, sent the command. A data packet containing every second of the original Sylph distress call, every image of the Krail atrocities, and a simple log of the unyielding Resolve's actions, the ghost-making, the sabotages, the liberation of the garrison burst from the ship. It was a roar of truth into the void, a final witness statement. It was addressed to the Galactic Concord, to any listening post, to history itself. The message was simple. We were here. This is why. 1 minute, Tactical said Sergeant Park Ji-hun stood at the main doorway, looking out at the forest. His Marines were with the Sylph, deep in the strongest caves, but he knew it would not be enough against orbital fire. He felt a strange calm. They had fought well. They had made monsters feel fear. Choi Yuna was down in engineering, her hand resting on the main reactor console. She had rigged every non-essential system into a final, desperate energy shield that would cover a small area around the ship. It would last maybe 10 seconds against the barrage. She closed her eyes, thinking not of the cold equations of physics, but of the Sylph children's faces when she showed them how a simple circuit worked. 30 seconds. Kim Dae-Hyan took a final look at his crew. At the Elder. It has been an honor, he said. Then a new sound. Not an alarm. A deep, harmonic boom that vibrated through the ship's hull, through the very air. A sound of space itself tearing. On the screen, a slice of reality behind the Krail battle group shattered into a storm of blue-white light. From the storm, shapes emerged. Not the blocky, brutal forms of Krail design, but sleek, angular vessels, their hulls gleaming like polished silver. Dozens of them. They moved with a silent, deadly grace. Their hulls bore names in human script. Furious Heart, Oath of Vengeance. Pale Rider. A new voice filled the bridge of the unyielding Resolve. Clear and sharp as a sword. Krail Battle Group. This is Admiral Park of the Terran 7th Fleet. You are targeting a human vessel and a protected civilian population. Power down your weapons and surrender your vessels immediately. The voice was not loud, but it carried a weight of absolute authority. Commander Vork, on the bridge of the Worldbreaker, recoiled. More humans? Where did they come from? Ignore them. Fire on the valley. Now. The Krail ships began to turn their weapons toward the planet. Admiral Park's voice returned, cold and final. You have your answer. The Terran Seventh Fleet moved. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration. A surgical strike. While the Krail ships were slow, turning their massive bulk, the human vessels split into precise formations. They did not aim for the hulls. They aimed for the weapons. Lances of brilliant blue energy, precise and focused, stabbed out. They struck the Krail cruiser's main gun batteries, not to explode them, but to melt them into slag. Missiles, smaller and faster than anything the Krail possessed, streaked in, detonating not on shields, but against the weaker shield projectors and engine nozzles. The human ships were like wolves harrying a bear, moving too fast, striking too precisely. The World Breaker fired its main cannon, a massive green beam that could crack a continent. It missed the darting human flagship by kilometers, carving a useless scar across space. Before it could fire again, a coordinated volley from 3 human destroyers severed its primary power conduit. The great cruiser went dark, adrift. The 2 destroyers fared no better. One found its communications array destroyed, and its thrusters, leaving it spinning silently. The other, trying to flee, was herded by gravitational pulses from human ships into a web of kinetic mines that shredded its armor without a single energy weapon being fired in less than 10 minutes. The Krail battle group was neutralized. Lifeless, powerless, humiliated in the valley, the silence was profound. Then, from the caves and the trees, the Sylph emerged. They looked up at the sky, where the terrifying green lights of the Krail ships had been replaced by the steady, clean blue running lights of the human fleet. A shuttle, sleek and swift, descended from the flagship and landed in the clearing beside the battered, unyielding Resolve. A figure in an admiral's uniform stepped out, followed by an honor guard. Admiral Park was an older man, his face lined with command, but his eyes were the same as Captain Kim's, calm over a deep, unyielding fire. Captain Kim Gae-hyon walked out to meet him, his crew behind him. They saluted. Admiral Park returned the salute, then clasped Kim's arm. "You held the line, Captain. You made them look at you." He then turned to Elder Liren, who stood with their people. The Admiral bowed, lower than Kim had. "Elder Liren, on behalf of humanity, I apologize that our answer was not quicker. But hear me now, and let the stars hear me. The law of the Protectate is declared. You, and all who are preyed upon by the strong, are under our guard. Your call will never be answered with silence again." He turned, his voice booming, amplified across the valley, and up to the Krail ships drifting powerless above. "Let this be known. You believed strength gave you the right to consume the weak. You were wrong. Your strength only makes you a target. Harm those under our protection, and you will meet the full, focused fury of humankind. Not for territory. Not for resources. For them." He pointed to the Sylph, to the children, now watching with wide, wondering eyes. Park Ji-hun stood at attention, the cold anger in him finally warming into a fierce, proud ember. Choi Yuna grinned, wiping a smudge of grease from her cheek, already thinking of the tech she could trade with the fleet engineers. Lee Hanyul wept quietly, the weight of the stories she carried finally lightened by the sight of the rescue she had dreamed of. Elder Liren stepped forward, their voice clear and strong, a chime that rang across the clearing. "We asked if the stars were silent. You answered with a thunder that will echo forever. You have given us more than our world. You have given us a new song. It is a song of furious mercy." Above them, the human fleet took position around the planet, a shield of unwavering light against the dark. The call for help had gone out. The galactic concord had offered silence. Humanity had answered. And the galaxy, hearing that answer delivered not with diplomacy, but with undeniable, righteous fury, would forever think twice before threatening the helpless again. The heart of the Krail occupation was a place of harsh noise and harsh light. Garrison Prime was built upon the ruins of a sylph crystalline garden. Where soft, glowing pathways once wound, there were now stark metal plates. Where delicate spires had stood, now there were guard towers and sensor dishes, painting the night air with green scanning beams. Inside the central command bunker, Commander Vork seethed. Reports flickered on his screen another patrol, disarmed and shamed. A supply depot malfunctioning, sensors detecting phantom energy signatures deep in the cursed forests. This was not conquest. This was an infestation. He wanted to burn the forest to ash from orbit, but High Command had been clear. The planet's unique crystalline core was to be taken intact for mining. His fury had no outlet. He did not know that the infestation was already inside his walls, dot deep beneath the metal plating. In the cool, dark silence of the ancient crystal caves, Park Ji-hoon moved. He was a shadow among bigger shadows. With him were two of his Marines and a young sylph guide named Tail, whose large eyes saw perfectly in the dark. The tunnels were a natural labyrinth, but Tail knew them like the lines on his own hand. They had entered through a hidden sinkhole 2 kilometers away, bypassing every perimeter fence and sensor field. The main power conduit for the garrison is above us here. Tail chimed softly, his voice a beautiful sound in the dark. He pointed a slender finger upward at the ceiling of the cave, which was studded with raw, faintly glowing crystals. They built their generator hub directly over the old place of resonance. The stone is thin. Ji-hun nodded. He placed his hands on the cool crystal. He could feel a faint, rhythmic vibration, the thrum of the Krail generators. He set his team to work, placing small, shaped charges in a precise circle. These were not for destruction. They were for precision. Yuna had engineered them to focus their energy upward, to crack and crumble, not to explode outward. On my signal? Ji-hun whispered into his comms. Not before. Above ground, at the forest's edge, exactly 1 kilometer from the garrison's main gate, Choi Yuna finished her own work. It was not a weapon. It was a speaker. A very large, very powerful speaker, hooked into a web of amplifiers she had built from salvaged Krail comes equipment and parts from the unyielding Resolve's entertainment system. It was pointed directly at Garrison Prime. Lee Haniel sat beside her, a data slate in her hands. On it were complex sound files, not music, but sonic frequencies. She had worked with Sylph historians for days, analyzing the structural harmonics of Krail alloy and the resonant pitch of their own power systems. This was her weapon, physics. They're ready, Haniel said, her voice calm. The fear was still there, but it was buried under a layer of cold, determined purpose. Yuna gave a thumbs up. Biggest noise complaint in galactic history, coming up. Captain Kim Dae-hyen's voice came over all their comms. He was back on the bridge of the unyielding Resolve, the ship's limited sensors focused on the garrison. All teams stand by. The patrols have just rotated. Gate guards are at minimal alert. Begin Operation Resonant Fury. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Below the garrison, Ji-hun pressed the trigger. There was a deep, grinding crunch, a sound felt more in the bones than heard by the ears. The circle of crystal and rock above him gave way, collapsing upward in a shower of dust and debris. It did not explode into the generator room. It simply opened a perfect 5-meter-wide hole in the floor. Krail engineers staggered back, coughing in the dust, staring in confusion at the hole into the planet's depths. Then, Park Ji-hun and his Marines rose from it. They did not scream or shout. They moved in utter, terrifying silence. Their kinetic rifles fired with soft pops, targeting the joints in Krail armor, the power packs on their backs, the control consoles of the generators. They were surgical and fast. In less than a minute, The main power grid was offline, and the room was secure, the occupants stunned and disabled. The garrison was plunged into emergency lighting. A dim, angry red dot. This was the signal dot at the forest's edge. Choi Yuna slammed a master switch. Lee Hanyul activated her sound sequence. A sound erupted from the giant speaker. It was not a single tone, but a cascading, shrieking horde of layered frequencies. To human and sylph ears, it was a loud, unpleasant shriek. But to the Krail technology and the metal of their own garrison, it was chaos. The sound waves hit the outer walls of Garrison Prime. The specific frequencies matched the natural resonant frequency of the Krail battle alloy. The metal began to vibrate. At first, it was a faint humming. Then panels started to rattle. Bolts loosened. Viewports in the guard towers cracked with a spider web of fissures inside. The effect was worse. The sound penetrated. It screamed through comms systems, overloading speakers. It vibrated weapon racks, causing rifles to clatter to the floor. It was a physical, dizzying assault that no armor could block. Krail soldiers clutched their heads, disoriented and in pain. Commander Vork roared, stumbling in the red dark, his command screens flickering and dying. What is this? Find the source. Destroy it. But his soldiers were in no condition to fight. They were blind, deafened, and shaken. From another hidden tunnel mouth, much closer to the walls, more of Ji-hun's Marines emerged. They did not assault the main gates. They used grappling hooks and the now vibrating, loosened wall plates to scale the walls silently. They dropped into the interior courtyards. Their mission was not to kill. It was to liberate. Guided by Sylph, who had been prisoners and knew the layout, they hit the detention blocks. The locks, electronic, had shorted out from the power loss and the sonic attack. They swung open. The Marines moved through the dark halls, whispering in the few words of Sylph they had learned. We are friends. We are here. Follow. The Sylph prisoners, frail and frightened, saw the human Marines, not as new captors, but as fierce, silent angels emerging from the noise and the dark. They followed, hurrying towards the holes in the walls, towards the freedom of the forest. For 20 minutes, the sonic wail continued. For 20 minutes, the Krail garrison was a hell of noise and confusion. For 20 minutes, Park Ji-hun's team held the power hub. A knife pressed to the garrison's heart. Then, as suddenly as it started, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was ringing and absolute. The Marines melted away, taking the freed Sylph with them back into the tunnels and the forest. Ji-hun's team dropped back through the hole in the generator room, vanishing into the deep caves, leaving only stunned Krail and the smell of ozone and fear. When the backup generators finally whined to life an hour later, Commander Vork stormed through his garrison. His walls were damaged. His weapons were scattered. His comms were a mess of feedback. And his prisoners were gone. In the center of the main yard, planted in the hard-packed earth, was a single standard-issue human marine combat knife. Stuck to its hilt was a small data chip. Vork snatched it and played it on a portable viewer. It showed a simple message, text in the human language, with a Krail translation below. You came to teach the weak your law of strength. We are here to teach you ours. The law is this: harm the helpless and you will meet us. We do not come with flags or demands. We come with fury. Leave this world, or the next sound you hear will be your last. The message ended. Vork stared at the empty detention blocks, at the cracked walls, at the silent forest that had somehow birthed this nightmare. For the first time since the conquest began, a feeling colder than anger touched him. It was the first prickling of doubt, the first inkling of fear. The call for help had been a whisper. The answer was a shriek of breaking metal, a silent knife in the dark, and a promise of unending, focused wrath. The forest of Illyria was a damp, close world of deep shadows and soft, mournful sounds. The unyielding resolve sat in its clearing like a wounded beast, steam still hissing from its scarred hull. Inside, the mood was not one of defeat, but of grim. Focused Energy. Captain Kim Dae-hyun stood in the ship's small mess hall, which had become a war room. A holographic map of the valley glowed on the table, pieced together from orbital scans and Sylph knowledge. Red dots marked known Krail positions. There were many. They have a main garrison here, Kim said, pointing to a site 10 kilometers north, near the ruined Crystal City. They send out patrols in a rotating pattern. They are methodical. They are also arrogant. They do not expect resistance. Sergeant Park Ji-hun studied the map. His initial hot anger had cooled into a hard, sharp tool. They move in groups of 4. Heavy armor, energy rifles. They stick to the open paths, the old Sylph roads. They're not forest fighters. Lee Haniel spoke softly. The Sylph say the patrols are not just for security. They are hunting. For sport. They take prisoners back to the garrison. They don't come out. Her hands were clenched in her lap. She had spent hours with Elder Liren and others, listening. Each story was a weight on her soul. Choi Yuna leaned against a wall, arms crossed. Their tech is strong, but simple. Big shields, big guns. Their ships are the same. Brute force. Our advantage is here. She tapped her temple. And our ship's reactor is intact. We have power. We just can't fly. Kim nodded. Then we use the power for something else. We make them see ghosts. The plan was not to win a war. It was to start a riot. A very precise, very angry riot. Yuna's workshop became the heart of it. With a team of Sylph volunteers who, though frail, were clever with their hands, she began building. She routed power from the ship's core into a series of portable emitter units. They weren't weapons. They were stage lights. They rely on thermal and energy scans, she explained to Ji-hun, her face smudged with grease. So we give them a show. She held up a small device. This puts out a thermal signature and an energy bloom that looks, for about 3 seconds, exactly like the power surge of a human plasma rifle firing. From a distance, their sensors will swear it's one of us. Ji-hun allowed himself a thin, cold smile. You make the ghosts. I'll make them scream. Out in the forest, the rules changed. Park Ji-hun and his 5 Marines became shadows. They shed their standard armor for lighter, stealth-suited gear, smeared with the dark, damp earth of Illyria. They did not fight the Krail patrols. They watched them. Ji-hun crouched in the thick branches of a towering fern, perfectly still. Below, a Krail patrol stomped down a path, their heavy boots crushing delicate, glowing fungi. They talked in their guttural language, laughing. One kicked over a delicate Sylph shrine made of stacked crystals. Ji-hun's finger rested beside the trigger of his rifle, but he did not move. He waited until they passed. Then, with silent gestures, he directed his team. They moved like whispers through the undergrowth, placing Yuna's small devices in a wide arc ahead of the patrol's route. 20 minutes later, the Krail were walking into the trap. From the trees to their left, a device activated. On the Kral's sensor packs, a bright, sudden signature flared, the unmistakable brief energy spike of a weapon charge. The Krail turned as one, raising their rifles, barking orders. They fired into the empty trees, blasting apart foliage. As they focused there, another device triggered behind them. They spun, confused. A third signature appeared to their right, then 2 more deeper in the forest. Their scanners were screaming with false contacts, painting a picture of a large, surrounding force. The patrol leader roared, calling for backup. They stopped their advance, hunkering down, firing at shadows. For an hour, they wasted ammunition and energy on empty forest. While they were distracted, Ji-hun's team was 2 kilometers away at a small Krail supply depot. It was lightly guarded, the soldiers bored, their attention now pulled toward the frantic comms traffic from the panicked patrol. 2 Marines provided a distraction with another set of Yuna's ghost makers. The remaining 4, with Ji-hun, slipped in. They didn't plant bombs. They sabotaged. They poured forest grit into fuel lines. They subtly rewired communication relays so they would fail under high load. They tagged every vehicle and crate with a tiny, nearly undetectable human signal beacon. They vanished before the confused depot guards even knew they were there. Back at the ship, Lee Hanyul worked on a different front. She had set up a field hospital with the Sylph. She treated burns from Krail energy cuffs, infections from poor treatment, the deep trauma of loss. But she also listened, and she learned that an elderly Sylph, a historian named Firen, showed her maps of the deep crystal caves, tunnels that ran for kilometers under the mountains. We used them for quiet reflection, Firen chimed sadly. Now they are our hiding places. Hanyul brought this information to Kim. They don't know these tunnels exist. Their deep geological scans are basic. We could move freely. Kim saw the opportunity. He also saw the need for a statement. The Krail thought they were hunting helpless prey. They needed to learn they were in a cage with something dangerous. The next day, a Krail patrol did not return to the garrison. A search team found them in a ravine. Their weapons were gone. Their comms units were smashed. They were alive, but each one had been disabled with a single precise kinetic strike to a joint, a shoulder, a knee. They were trussed up with their own binding cords. No human was seen. The only message was a small carved piece of Sylph crystal placed on the patrol leader's chest. It was a traditional Sylph symbol. Firen told Hanyul it meant "you are seen." The Krail commander at the garrison, a brutish officer named Vork, was furious. This was not war. This was an insult. He ordered more patrols, larger groups. But the forest had become a terrifying place for the Krail. Every rustle of leaves might be a ghost. Every glitch on their scanner might be a sniper. They started firing at every strange sound, wasting energy, their nerves fraying. Captain Kim monitored it all from the ship. The Krail were reacting just as he hoped. They were being drawn in, confused, their strength dissipated against phantoms. But he knew the clock was ticking. It was only a matter of time before Vork stopped sending patrols and simply decided to level the entire forest with orbital bombardment. He called his key people together. Hanyul, Yuna, Ji-hun, and Elder Liren. We have their attention, Kim said. Now we need their fear. We need to show them that their strength is useless here. We hit the garrison. Ji-hun's eyes gleamed. Yuna nodded, already thinking of the tools she could build. Hanyul felt a chill, but also a fierce protectiveness for the Sylph looking on. Elder Liren spoke, their chime-like voice firmer than before. You fight a monster to save us. We have only songs and stories. How can we help? Kim looked at the elder, then at the determined faces of his crew. You already have, he said. You showed us the ground. You showed us the tunnels. And you showed us what we're fighting for. That is everything. He turned to the map, his finger landing on the red dot of the garrison. The call for help went out. For the last few days, we have been the answer. Now, it's time to show the Krail what that answer really means. The stars stretched into lines of light, and then collapsed back into pinpricks as the unyielding resolve fell out of faster-than-light travel. The transition was smooth, a testament to Choi Yuna's engineering, but the silence that followed was heavy. The bridge crew stared at the main viewer. Captain Kim Dae-Hyan had expected a war zone. What he saw was a graveyard, The planet Illyria hung in space, a marble of soft blues and greens. But its beauty was scarred. Ugly black smudges stained its surface-burned cities. Thin plumes of smoke still rose into the atmosphere. In the high orbit, the debris of shuttered satellites drifted like a glittering, deadly ring. There were no Sylph vessels, only the sharp, angular shapes of Krail ships, a bulbous cruiser, and several smaller destroyer-class vessels. Like predators circling a kill, no energy signatures from the surface that matched Sylph technology, reported the tactical officer, his voice tight. Multiple power sources consistent with Krail ground installations. Lee Haniel's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her sensors. I'm scanning the distress signal's origin point. It's gone. The city it came from is a thermal scar. She swallowed. But I'm picking up residual comms traffic. Very faint, on a different band. It's not a broadcast. It's a whisper. Can you trace it? Kim asked, his eyes never leaving the planet. Working on it. It's bouncing the signal through geological formations. It's coming from the southern continent, the deep forests. The Krail have detected us, Tactical announced. One of the destroyers is breaking orbit, moving to intercept. A new image appeared on the screen. It was a Krail. Its reptilian face was all sharp angles and cold yellow eyes. It did not wait for a hail. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Krail sovereign space. Identify your species and purpose. Your compliance is demanded. The voice was a guttural hiss, the translation software stripping any tone, but arrogance from it. Kim Dae-hyun took a slow breath. He nodded to Hanyul. Open a channel. Audio only. This is Captain Kim Dae-hyun of the human vessel Unyielding Resolve. We are responding to a distress call from the native species of this world, the Sylph. We observe hostile actions against them. We request you cease all hostilities immediately and withdraw your forces. There was a moment of silence, then a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. Human, your database is small. The Sylph are weak. Their world is forfeit. Their resources are now ours. Their species serves the Krail. This is the natural order. Withdraw now, or you will be removed. The channel cut. The Krail destroyer, the Glorious Claw, powered its engines and began to close the distance, its weapons ports glowing with a malevolent green light. They're locking on. Tactical called out. Evasive pattern beta, Kim ordered, his voice calm. Do not return fire. Not yet. Yuna, I need every scrap of power to the engines and shields. Hanyul, I need that location. Ji-hun to the bridge. The ship thrummed as it swung away, graceful under Yuna's expert tuning. The Krail ship was bigger, bulkier. It fired a warning shot, a searing particle beam that missed the hull by a few kilometers. It was a display of force, a bully's shove. Sergeant Park Ji-hun arrived, already in his combat rig, his face a stone. He looked at the viewer, at the planet, at the attacking ship. He didn't speak. We are not here to win a space battle, Kim said, speaking to all of them. We are here to answer the call. Hanyul, I have it. A narrow valley, heavy forest canopy. Life signs. Sylph life signs, and a small hidden launch pad. Primitive. Set course. Maximum atmospheric entry speed. We're going down. Captain, Tactical said, alarmed. The destroyer will be in optimal firing range in 90 seconds. If we enter the atmosphere, we'll be a slow, hot target. I know. Yuna, on my mark, I want a full emergency burn for 30 seconds. Then cut all power, everything but life support and passive sensors. We're going to play dead. Yuna's eyes went wide, then narrowed in understanding. A hard radiation burst from the engines will fog their scopes. They'll think they scored a lucky hit when we go dark. But the heat from atmospheric entry will look like a burning wreck breaking up. Do it." The unyielding resolve turned its nose toward the planet, a bright blue-white flame erupting from its engines as it accelerated with a force that strained the gravity plating. The Krail ship fired again, this time a full volley. Beams of energy lit up space around them. One grazed the shields, making the ship shudder. Shields at 60%. Now Una. Cut power. The engine flare died instantly. Every light on the bridge went out, replaced by dim red emergency bulbs. The consoles went dark. The only sound was the creak of the hull and the rush of air as the ship, now a silent, hot piece of metal, punched into the upper atmosphere of Illyria. Fire wrapped around the view screen. To the Krail above, it would look like a kill. Inside, it was a controlled fall. Kim held onto his chair, his knuckles white. "Pull up, gently. Use maneuvering thrusters only." Like a leaf riding a thermal, the ship leveled out, its hull groaning in protest. They skimmed over mountains, then dove into the deep purple-green canopy of an immense forest. The ship settled with a final heavy thud in a clearing, crushing ancient trees beneath it. The silence that followed was broken only by the ping of cooling metal and the distant calls of alien birds. The main door opened, and the humid, sweet air of Illyria flooded in. Park Ji-hun and his Marines were first out, weapons raised, scanning the dense, vine-choked trees. Kim, Hanyul, and Una followed. They didn't have to search. From the shadows of the giant ferns, they emerged. The SY-off thought they were just as the distress call showed them, tall, slender, with skin that caught the dappled forest light in soft, crystalline patterns. But in person, their fragility was more profound. They moved with a quiet, fearful grace. Their large, luminous eyes were fixed on the humans, filled with a terrible mixture of awe and fear. One stepped forward, older, their body marked with intricate patterns. It was the being from the broadcast. Elder Lirin, Lee Hanyul, her heart hammering, activated her translation device. The soft chimes of the Sylph language became words in her ear. "You? You are the ones who heard?" Kim Dae-Hyen stepped forward, removing his helmet. He bowed his head, a simple human gesture of respect. "We heard. I am Captain Kim. This is my crew." Elder Lirin's gaze swept over the Marines in their armor, over the hard lines of the crashed ship. "You are warriors. But you are only one ship. The Krail. They are a swarm. They break worlds. They told us strength is the only law. They told us our song was over." The elder's voice was a melody of deep sorrow. Park Ji-hun looked past Lirin into the forest. More Sylph were there, hundreds of them hiding. He saw children, their large eyes peeking from behind their parents. He saw bandages made of leaves, and a hollow look of hunger and loss. The cold anger in his gut, the one he carried for a living, turned into something else, something hotter and more dangerous. "Your song is not over," Captain Kim said, his voice firm. "But you are right. We are only one ship. We cannot fight their swarm." He looked at the sky, where the Krail ships would be searching. "But we do not have to fight them all. We just have to make them bleed. We have to make them look at us. And we have to hold on." "Hold on for what?" Lirin asked, the hope in their voice so fragile it hurt to hear. Kim Dae-Hyen looked at his crew. At Hanyul, who was already moving to the Sylph children with a medkit. At Una, who was scanning the ship's hull, her mind already solving the problem of repairs under fire. At Ji-hun, whose entire being was focused on protecting this vulnerable flock. "For the rest of the answer," Kim said. The call went out. "We are the first to speak, but we will not be the last." The void between stars was not truly empty. It hummed with the leftover whisper of creation, a cosmic static that most ships filtered out. On the bridge of the human deep-range vessel Unyielding Resolve, this whisper was Lee Haniel's entire world. She was the ship's listener, her ears and eyes tuned to frequencies most ignored. Her screens displayed cascading waterfalls of data, lines of light representing radio waves, gravitational ripples, and the strange, non-standard pulses that sometimes hinted at intelligence. It was quiet work, often lonely. The soft glow of her console was a familiar companion. Captain Kim Dae-hyun stood at the central command platform, a man carved from calm itself. He observed the star charts, his hands clasped behind his back. The Unyielding Resolve was on a long-duration survey mission, mapping quiet sectors on the sea, galactic rim, peaceful, routine. The crew went about their duties with the quiet efficiency of people who knew their jobs and did them well. In engineering, Choi Yuna had her hands inside an access panel. A faint, troubling vibration in the secondary plasma conduit had caught her attention hours ago. She wasn't one to let a mystery go unsolved. Her world was one of tangible things, wires, conduits, the thrum of the reactor core. If she could touch it, she could fix it. She pulled a slightly charmed component free, her nose wrinkling at the smell of ozone. "Stubborn piece of junk," she muttered, but her eyes were already scanning for the replacement part. Down in the Marine Ready Room, Sergeant Park Ji-hun was not a man of peace. His peace was found in preparation. He meticulously disassembled his service rifle, each component laid out on a clean cloth in a precise order. Clean, check, reassemble. The rhythmic action was a meditation. He was a blunt instrument on a ship of scientists and explorers, and he was comfortable with that reality. His purpose was to be ready, just in case the universe stopped being polite. Haniel's fingers paused over her console. A ripple in the data stream. Not a natural stellar flare or pulsar beat. This was structured. It was buried deep, woven into the chaotic radio noise of a distant, dying stellar nursery, a place of screaming energy and violent birth. Someone had hidden a message in the last place anyone would look for one. Her heart gave a little jump. She isolated the signal, her tools stripping away the cosmic interference layer by layer. It was weak, fragmented, repeating on a desperate loop. It wasn't just a simple distress call. It was a raw data stream, a flood of information packed into the plea. "Captain Kim," she said, her voice cutting the bridge's quiet. It was higher than she intended. "I have an anomalous signal. It's artificial. It's a distress packet." Kim Dae-hyun turned, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. "Origin?" "Triangulating. It's coming from the Hyron sector. The stellar nursery designated Cradle 77. Haniel's hands flew across the controls. "The signal is incredibly sophisticated. They used the nursery's own emissions as a carrier wave. It's like they were whispering into a hurricane, hoping someone would hear the words. Decode it. Put it on the main screen." The bridge crew paused their work. Choi Yuna emerged from engineering, wiping her hands on a cloth. Park Ji-hun appeared at the bridge entrance, his presence a silent, solid shadow. The main viewer flickered. Static resolved into an image, and the quiet routine of the Unyielding Resolve shattered. The visuals were jarring, shaky, as if recorded on a device, clutched in a trembling hand. The scene was a city, but unlike any human design. Structures of delicate, interlocking crystal caught the light, throwing soft rainbows across wide, organic plazas. It was beautiful, and it was being destroyed. Hulking, armored figures stomped through the scene. They were reptilian, scaled in dull greens and browns, their snouts filled with sharp teeth. Their weapons belched searing lances of energy that shattered the crystalline walls into smoking slag. The attackers moved with a brutal, methodical purpose. This was not a battle. It was a demolition, And then there were the city's inhabitants. They were slender, their skin having a faint, pearlescent, crystalline sheen. They had large, luminous eyes that took up much of their faces' eyes, now wide with terror. They offered no resistance. Some tried to run, only to be cut down by precise, merciless energy bolts. Others were herded together, their graceful hands bound with heavy shackles. Their cries were not screams, but haunting, melodic wails of despair that cut through the audiostatic dot. The data stream was more than pictures. It was biometric readouts showing spiking fear chemicals. It was population logs, numbers ticking down into the thousands. It was cultural archives, music, art, history being systematically deleted by invading digital viruses. It was a civilization being erased in real time, the final image stabilized. One of the crystalline beings, older, its skin patterned with fine lines like frost, looked directly into the recorder. Its large, dark eyes held a depth of sorrow that was almost unbearable. The translated text scrolled below, matching the soft, chime-like speech. "We are the Sylph of the world Illyria. The Krail have come. They say the strong must rule the weak. They say our song has ended. We have called to the galactic concord, but the stars are silent. We fall. Is there no one in the stars who hears? Is there no one who answers?" The screen went dark. The silence on the bridge was absolute and heavy. Lay, Haniel found her cheeks were wet. The sorrow in that final question echoed in her bones. Sergeant Park Ji-hun stood perfectly still, but the muscle in his jaw jumped rhythmically. He had seen terrible things in his service, but the sheer, one-sided slaughter of these gentle creatures. His hands, which knew so well the weight and function of a weapon, curled into helpless fists. Choi Yuna, who dealt in broken systems, stared at the black screen. "They're just crushing them, like bugs." Her voice was flat, all emotion pressed down under a cold, hardening anger. Captain Kim Dae-hyun's face was an unreadable mask. He looked from the screen to the star chart, where the cursor blinked over the Hyren sector. He knew of the Krail. The Galactic Concord's briefings listed them as a militaristic, expansionist species. The Concord's official stance was one of non-interference in developing cultural paradigms. Dry. Words that meant they let monsters eat there. Neighbors. He thought of the Sylph's final question. Is there no one who answers? The Concord had heard. The Concord had chosen silence. Kim Dae-hyun turned from the screen, his decision made in the utter stillness of his heart. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and clear, a knife through the emotional fog on his bridge. Navigation. Plot an immediate course for the Hyren sector, Sylph Prime coordinates. Maximum burn. Divert all non-essential power to the FTL drives. The navigator, jolted from his horror, stammered, "Sir?" "The mission protocol." "The mission has changed?" Kim said, his tone leaving no room. He looked at Haniel. "Open a tight beam channel to Sol Command. Send to complete the stress packet. No analysis, no commentary. Just the raw data. Append only this text. The call has been heard." The unyielding resolve is answering. He then looked at each of his senior crew. Haniel, her empathy a raw wound. Ji-hun, his soldier's fury barely contained. Yuna, her practical mind already calculating the odds of a fight. "We are one ship," Kim stated, acknowledging the terrifying truth. "We are not a fleet. We are not an army." But a call for help went out. He paused, and for the first time, they saw the fire that his calm had banked. It was a cold, righteous fire, and humanity will not let it be answered with silence. Prepare for tactical response. We go to war.